In a world that feels like it's buzzing with tension, the 25th Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin, China, well, it was way more than just another meeting. This was a high-stakes get-together of leaders from all across Eurasia, each trying to figure out their place on a planet that's seriously in flux, and maybe, just maybe, even redraw the lines of global power.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. We're going to look at why this summit was so incredibly important by digging into 5 key areas. First, the geopolitical chessboard they were playing on. Then, what they actually got done, the key outcomes. We'll also unpack the agendas of the big 3 players. Then we'll zoom in on India's really delicate balancing act. And finally, we'll tackle the biggest question of all, are we watching a new world order take shape right before our eyes?
All right, first up, let's set the scene. To really get why this meeting was such a big deal, you have to understand the intense, global pressure cooker environment these leaders were walking into.
So you had 3 huge pressure points squeezing the globe at this time. First, you've got the raw military tensions still simmering from those deadly 2020 border clashes between India and China. Then, of course, the massive geopolitical fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And to top it all off, an economic shockwave, the US hitting India with these steep new tariffs. All of this basically forced everyone to rethink who their friends really are.
And right out of the gate, Chinese President Xi Jinping set this incredibly defiant tone. His message was crystal clear. This wasn't just a routine summit. This was about building an alternative to the US-led world order. A system where, as he put it, the house rules aren't just dictated by a handful of powerful countries.
Okay, so with that tense backdrop, what actually got done in Tianjin? Did all that high-stakes talk lead to any real concrete action? Let's take a look.
First, just a quick refresher for anyone who needs it. The SCO, it's not a military pact like NATO. You should think of it more like a massive Eurasian club that focuses on security, politics, and economics. It's been around since 2001 and has just been getting bigger and more influential ever since.
And boy, were they busy. The leaders left Tianjin having signed over 20, that's 20, major documents. So yeah, this was definitely not just a photo op. They were laying out a really detailed agenda for the entire next decade.
What's really striking here is just the sheer range of these agreements. You've got the main political statement, the Tianjin Declaration, which for instance condemned a terror attack in India. But then right next to that, you've got a long-term economic strategy, a plan to fight extremism, and a whole roadmap for energy cooperation. So it wasn't about just one issue. They were trying to build this comprehensive framework for everything.
And it went beyond just high-level strategies on paper. The SCO is building actual, tangible institutions. They announced 4 brand new centers, and each one is designed to tackle a really specific threat, from cyber attacks to organized crime and drug trafficking. They're literally building the plumbing for deeper cooperation.
But, maybe the biggest move of all was the decision to fast-track their own SCO development bank. With a huge financial pledge from China to kick things off, this is probably the clearest signal yet that this group wants to build its own financial ecosystem, one that's less reliant on Western institutions like the World Bank and the IMF.
Of course, you really can't talk about the SCO without zooming in on its 3 giants: China, Russia, and India. Each one of them came to this summit with a very different set of goals, and understanding those goals is absolutely key to understanding the entire organization.
And the competing agendas here are just so clear. You have China wanting to use the SCO to push back against Western influence. You have Russia desperate to prove it's not isolated and still has powerful friends. And then you've got India performing this really complex dance, trying to advance its own security and economic agenda while carefully keeping its independence from any one bloc.
So let's dig a little deeper into India's position, because it was, you could argue, the most complicated one in the room. New Delhi had to carefully manage its relationship with a historic partner like Russia, a tense rival in China, and a pretty strained partnership with the West, all at the same time.
What's so important here is that India didn't just show up to react to what others were doing. Nope, it came with its own proactive vision for the region. Prime Minister Modi boiled it down to 3 pillars: security, with a big focus on counterterrorism, connectivity, but built on India's own terms, and opportunity, to boost cooperation across the region.
Now, a major point of friction was this idea of connectivity, because it basically revealed 2 competing worldviews. On one side, you have China's massive, sprawling Belt and Road Initiative, and pushing back against it, India put forward its sovereignty-first model, It was a direct challenge, arguing that any big project has to respect national borders and be totally transparent, without any of those hidden debt traps we hear so much about.
And look, this wasn't just talk. India came to the table with concrete examples. It pointed to projects like the Chabahar port in Iran and that huge north-south transport corridor as living, breathing proof of its alternative, more transparent approach to building regional connections.
Okay, let's zoom the camera all the way back out. After all the handshakes, the declarations, and the competing visions we saw in Tianjin, what does it all really mean for the global balance of power?
This is really the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Is this group, maybe along with others like BRICS, actually evolving into a genuine bloc that can challenge the decades-long dominance of Western alliances like NATO and the G7?
But when you actually break it down, the differences are pretty stark. Unlike their Western counterparts, the SCO doesn't have a collective defense pact, nothing like NATO's famous Article 5. Economically, their members are often rivals, not partners in a single market. And this is crucial. They rely on consensus, which means they have very little real power to enforce their own decisions.
And these internal fractures, they're a really big deal. You've got these deep-seated rivalries, especially between India and China, that act like a constant brake on any real unity. Plus, there's the economic reality. A lot of these member countries are still hugely dependent on trade with the US and Europe. The result is you often get these watered-down statements instead of one single powerful voice.
So at the end of the day, what you should take away from all this is really that final question. The Tianjin summit was, without a doubt, another big step toward a more multipolar world. It showed a clear desire among major non-Western powers to build their own systems. But whether this is the real birth of a durable, cohesive new bloc or just a temporary alliance of convenience, well, that remains the great unanswered question of our time.